And now to the final video on the bureaucracy. I want to talk a little bit about the people working in the bureaucracy. So you can think of the bureaucracy as like a pyramid, right? A really big pyramid because there are millions of people who work in the bureaucracy. And at the very, very tip of the pyramid are the people who we refer to as political appointees. Each time a new administration comes in, so a president usually from a different party is elected, they'll bring in all new people. So that's when I say a new administration coming in, that's what I'm referring to. And there are about 2,000 positions that need to be filled when a new president comes in. So one of the first things that happens when a president is elected, right? They don't become president right away. They're referred to at that point as the president-elect. One of the first things they have to do is get a team together of people who look at resumes and they start thinking about who they want to fill these positions within the bureaucracy. And now that you know what the bureaucracy does, you can see how important it is to have people who are on board with what you want to get done, right? You need to have people who have that much power. You need to know that they're on the same page as you. So at the very top level are these political appointees. Once again, as I mentioned in an earlier video, they're nominated by the president. Many, but not all of them, have to be approved by the Senate. Now, there are people who work within the White House who don't have to be. The president can just pick people that he or eventually she wants. They have to be approved by the Senate by a simple majority. And most top-level political appointees serve for like 2 or 3 years and then they're out. The reason being this: it's a really hard job. Nobody gets a job in the top levels of the bureaucracy for the money. They take jobs like that oftentimes because they're asked by the president or the president's people to do a particular job. Oftentimes they do it out of service to their country. They know that it's not going to be a career because they know when the next president comes in, they're going to be likely be replaced. They do it out of service to the country. Or in fairness, because I don't want to sound too like naive, sometimes they do it because they want to have access to power. They want to be close to power or they want to exercise power. But they're not doing it for the money. They may be able to, in fairness, they may be able to parlay their experience in the bureaucracy into lucrative things after they leave the bureaucracy, but while they're there, they're not going to be making a ton of money. As a matter of fact, oftentimes people will leave jobs that pay extremely well to be in the bureaucracy, to be one of these political appointees, and then they leave the private sector, then they go work for the government for a while, and then they go back to the private sector and resume making lots of money. There are countless examples of millionaires, people who make a ton of money, who leave their jobs. And because when somebody's been elected president, they call you up and they say, I want you to serve in my administration, I need you. There's a tendency to want to answer the call of the president. And so they don't usually last very long. It's also a thankless job. I mean, when especially if you're in the very high echelons, if you're a secretary or attorney general, the deputies below them, the very people at the top levels of the bureaucracy, you're basically on call 24/7. There are no vacations for you. You're constantly involved in things. And so it's a very difficult job. Now at the middle and the lower levels, the people in the bureaucracy, we refer to them as civil servants. They are part of the civil service. And the way that they get their jobs is through an exam, a civil service exam. And the way it works is that they study for these exams, and the people who score the highest are supposed to be the ones who get the jobs, right? And so the idea is to make sure that the most competent people are the ones who are working in the bureaucracy. It used to be that what would happen is a new president would come in, they would fire everybody in the bureaucracy, and hire new people and get new people in there. And then if in 4 years there was a new president, they would fire everybody in the bureaucracy again and get their own people in there. That was a problem because nobody developed any expertise. People were only there for as long as the president was there. Now you have these civil servants who are there all the time, and they're supposed to be apolitical, non-political. When the president is a Democrat, they serve the president who's a Democrat. When a Republican comes in, they serve the Republican. When it switches back to the Democrat, they do the same thing. Their job is to carry out the law, right? And it doesn't matter who's in charge. Now you might think like there's no way that it's actually like that, but actually it is. It is. In the same way that soldiers don't care who the general is who's giving them orders, in the bureaucracy, you take orders from the people who are above you. Now, the thing about civil servants is that there are rules that protect them from being fired. In large part, it was designed to protect them from being fired for having different political views than the president. The goal of creating the civil service was to have these experts who stay in the government all the time and have a level of expertise. And so they can't be fired for political reasons. The problem with the bureaucracy sometimes is you can't be fired even for incompetence sometimes. And by the way, that I said I was a bureaucrat. That probably applies to some professors as well. But I'm not going to get into that because this is going to be up on YouTube. In any case, so that's the first part. Those are the people in the bureaucracy. Now, the next question is, why are bureaucracies needed? And I'm hoping that you kind of understand why from everything we've talked about, but just to be clear, I want to go over that. The reason bureaucracies are essential is because of what they're able to do. Again, in the federal bureaucracy, we're talking about literally millions of people, right? One of the things the bureaucracy is able to do is to organize large tasks. So I'm just going to give you an example of what I'm talking about. Let's say for whatever reason, the Department of Interior decides that it wants to change the rules within the national parks. Maybe they're going to change the speed limit that people can drive, or they're going to change what kind of things people can bring into the national parks that are spread all the way across the country, right? To go ahead and get that done, you're going to need all kinds of people to do stuff. If they're changing the speed limits in the national parks, you're going to need somebody to locate where all the speed limit signs are. They're going to have to order the news signs that have the correct speed limit. You're going to have to order the hardware and the woods. Somebody's going to have to go out and set up people to go and change them out. If they're changing what can be brought in, someone's going to have to type up the new rules and send them to all the rangers and all the various parks. It's just going to take a ton of people to get something that isn't particularly earth-shattering to get that done. And so the bureaucracy is capable of organizing those big kind of tasks. The other thing, and the other reason that bureaucracies are essential, is that because it allows for a concentration of specialized talent in very specific areas. I gave you the example before of OSHA and the hard hats, right? Somebody has to know what kind of plastic is appropriate for a hard hat. Somebody has to know what's the appropriate way to affix the fabric or the plastic that holds the hard hat above your head. What's the correct way, the safest way to affix that to the hard hat? How high above your head does that hat need to be? Right? Somebody has to be able to make those determinations. It's not going to be members of Congress. And so when you create OSHA, then you create this whole group of people who can study plastics, who crash hard hats over and over again to make sure that they're safe, who come up with the rules. Congress leaves these kind of technical decisions to the experts. And so by creating a civil service, you create this large group of people who have the time to develop this kind of expertise and learn how to ensure that policy is carried out properly. Okay? And that's it for the bureaucracy.